Welcome to this explainer. Today, we're diving straight into what I like to call the core DNA of global maritime safety, the ISM Code. If you've ever wanted to know exactly how the massive shipping industry manages to keep its vessels, its crews, and our oceans safe, well, you're in the exact right place. Have you ever actually stopped and wondered how the global supply chain prevents absolute catastrophic disasters? We're talking about thousands of massive floating steel structures carrying everything from volatile chemicals to thousands of passengers, navigating incredibly treacherous oceans every single day. The ocean is completely unforgiving. Without a rigorous, unified system, it would be total chaos. And the solution to preventing that chaos is exactly what we're decoding today. Let's take a quick look at our voyage plan for today. We'll be covering the birth of the ISM Code, its core purpose and objectives, the safety management system, key roles and responsibilities, audits and verification certificates, and finally, how we're modernizing maritime safety. Section 1. Birth of the ISM Code. From Wild West to mandatory safety. So let's start with the history, because to truly understand the solution, we've got to look at the massive problem the industry was facing. The shipping industry didn't just wake up one morning and decide to drown itself in paperwork. No, this was a reaction to a very real crisis. Back in the 1980s, there were a series of mounting tragic marine casualties, specifically involving roll-on/roll-off passenger ferries. It became painfully obvious to the IMO, the International Maritime Organization, that systematically organized management wasn't just a nice-to-have, it was absolutely indispensable. Hoping a ship was safe just wasn't cutting it anymore. This led directly to the birth of this mandatory framework. The IMO officially adopted the code in 1993, and by 1998, it actually became mandatory under SOLAS Chapter 9. And it's not some relic of the past either. The latest major updates just entered into force in 2015. Moving right along to Section 2, Core Purpose and Objectives, the Ultimate Standard. Now that we know why it was created, let's talk about what this code actually does. The 2018 edition firmly establishes the ISM Code as the absolute, definitive international standard for the safe management and operation of ships. It is literally the common language of safety for every single commercial vessel sailing internationally. To be incredibly precise, its full legal name is the International Management Code for the Safe Operation of Ships and for Pollution Prevention. That's a mouthful, right? But basically, its fundamental objective boils down to a three-pronged shield. It mandates safety at sea, prevents human injury or loss of life, and entirely avoids damage to the marine environment and property. Protect the people, protect the ship, protect the ocean. And there is a quote from the code's preamble that I absolutely love. It says, "The cornerstone of good safety management is commitment from the top." This is so crucial. Safety isn't just some checklist that gets tossed to the crew on deck to figure out on their own. No way. It requires absolute, undeniable dedication from the highest levels of shore-based management. The board of directors and the CEO are just as responsible for that ship's safety as the captain is. Section 3. The Safety Management System, the ship's operating system. To turn that high-level boardroom commitment into real action out on the water, every single company has to build a documented safety management system, widely known as the SMS. Honestly, the best way to think about the SMS is like a ship's operating system. Just like your smartphone needs an OS so it doesn't constantly crash, a ship needs an SMS to navigate some pretty severe hazards without incident. It's the centralized brain that governs everything the vessel and its crew do. So, what's actually in this operating system? Well, the CODIS mandates 6 specific functional requirements for an SMS. It starts with a rock-solid safety and environmental protection policy. Then you need incredibly specific instructions for safe operations. We are talking about everything from complex collision emergency procedures to super detailed tasks like self-unloading isolation protocols. On top of that, it requires clearly defined lines of communication between shore and ship, so nobody is ever disconnected. Plus, you need strict procedures for reporting accidents, prepping for emergency situations, and running internal audits and management reviews. Basically, absolutely no shipboard operation is left to chance. Section 4. Key roles and responsibilities, the human element. But here's the thing, an operating system is totally useless without the people running it, right? A giant binder full of procedures does no good if the crew is too terrified to actually use it. That's why the code places a massive emphasis on learning from mistakes through what we call a just culture. It forces companies to proactively identify hazardous occurrences and near misses. But the really critical part, crew members have to be able to report this essential safety information without any fear of retribution. When a near miss is reported safely, the company can investigate, share the underlying causes, and actually improve overall safety performance before a real tragedy happens. It completely flips safety from being a punitive, scary thing into a continuous improvement loop. Which brings us to Section 5, Audits and Verification Certificates, Proving Compliance. Okay, having great rules and a positive culture is fantastic in theory, but how on earth does the global maritime industry verify that companies are actually doing this? It all comes down to rigorous audits. And there is a very strict legal distinction here between shore and sea. To legally operate, a shipping company ashore must first pass an audit to receive a document of compliance, or DOC, for their office management system. That proves the company framework is solid. But wait, that's not enough. Every single individual ship in their fleet then has to undergo its own separate audit to prove it's actually operating according to that approved SMS. When the ship passes, it gets a Safety Management Certificate, or SMC. Without both the DOC and the SMC, a ship is literally forbidden from trading internationally. To get these certificates, flag administrations, the countries where the ships are registered, or the authorized classification societies acting for them, conduct really intense physical audits. They literally board the ship, interview the crew, dig through the paperwork, and verify that the operating system is actually alive and functioning on board before they will ever stamp that official safety management certificate. And let me tell you, failing to maintain this system has some incredibly severe consequences. When a ship pulls into a foreign port, it gets subjected to port state control inspections. And the data shows that ISM-related deficiencies are still a massive reason why ships get detained, meaning they are legally locked down and forbidden from leaving port. And honestly, it's often the basic, physical hardware issues that trigger these detentions. We're talking about things like poorly maintained lifeboats, unchecked main propulsion or auxiliary machinery, and compromised weather-tight conditions like faulty hatchways or windows. To an inspector, those physical failures are a massive red flag that the ship's SMS has fundamentally broken down. Section 6. Modernizing Maritime Safety, Evolving Risks. As we look at the modern shipping landscape, it's pretty clear that the threats of the 1980s are no longer the only things keeping captains up at night. The ISM Code is constantly evolving to tackle brand new frontiers of risk. For example, with ships basically becoming highly digitized floating data centers, the code had to expand. It now formally includes functional elements for maritime cyber risk management. The goal here is to make sure shipping is operationally resilient to hackers and cyber events. It proves that safety in the 21st century is just as much digital as it is physical. Under this cyber mandate, companies have to actively identify vulnerable data systems and clearly define personnel roles. Then, they've got to protect them. This means implementing serious risk control processes and contingency planning to ensure business continuity if an attack happens. And remember that rule about commitment from the top? Yeah, this cyber risk awareness absolutely has to be embedded right at the senior management level. On top of all that digital security, the SMS also has to adapt to some incredibly strict environmental compliance rules, specifically MARPL Annex 6. The days of just focusing on preventing oil spills? Long gone. Today, ship's SMS has to integrate complex climate compliance. We're talking about managing the 0.50% global sulfur cap, adhering to energy efficiency existing ship index limits, and managing daily operations to hit carbon intensity indicator operational ratings. They even have to execute a ship energy efficiency management plan and handle IMO data collection system reporting. All of this massive environmental data crunching is now baked right into the daily shipboard procedures governed by the ISM Code. So, as we wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with a thought to really reflect on. As alternative fuels and digital automation completely reshape the maritime industry, how will that crucial commitment from the top evolve to protect the seafarers of tomorrow? As we introduce highly volatile fuels like ammonia and hydrogen, or look toward autonomous, uncrewed digital ships, how will these safety management frameworks adapt? The ISM Code is without a doubt the ultimate standard today, but its true test is going to be how well it navigates the future. Thanks for joining me.